What if the child the world calls Lillibet Diana isn't who we were told she is? What if the Duchess of Sussex, former Hollywood actress turned royal firestarter, has been harboring a secret so incendiary, so destabilizing, that even Buckingham Palace dares not whisper it aloud? And what if, right now, a woman the world has never seen, hidden behind pseudonyms, NDAs, and layers of fear, has just broken her silence with one chilling message? I don't want your money. I just want my daughter back. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. This isn't tabloid gossip. This isn't a conspiracy theory plucked from the corners of the internet. This is a direct challenge to one of the most image-controlled women on earth, Meghan Markle. A woman whose personal brand has been meticulously polished, globally monetized, and relentlessly shielded. Until now. Because today, the cracks are showing. And behind those cracks lies a story the world was never meant to hear. Let's rewind. June 4th, 2021, the day Harry and Meghan announced the birth of their daughter, Lilibet Diana Mountbatten-Windsor. A name meant to pay tribute to both the Queen and Princess Diana. A headline moment. A PR masterstroke. A child that, at least on paper, sealed the Sussexes' legacy in both royal tradition and emotional nostalgia. But there was a problem. No hospital photos. No official birthing records released publicly. No attending doctor stepping forward. No royal family representative offering statements beyond boilerplate congratulations. Everything about the announcement felt off. Carefully managed. Obscured. And that's where the questions began. Where was the traditional photo call? Why did it take weeks for Lilibet's birth certificate to be finalized? Why did the certificate initially refer to Meghan as Rachel Meghan Markle, but later get altered to reflect her title, the Duchess of Sussex, unlike her son Archie's record? At first, it felt like royal nitpicking. But then came the leaks, the contradictions, the whispers from within Meghan's own former circles. And finally, years later, the tipping point, a voicemail. A grainy, heart-wrenching voice message, allegedly sent to a British journalist from a burner phone in New York. A woman's voice, soft, trembling, soaked in anguish. Her identity still concealed, her words unmistakable. I held her. I named her. And I gave her away. But I never agreed to this circus. I don't want anything from them. I just want to see my daughter again. Immediately, the world split in two. One side dismissed it as madness, another Meghan hit job. But the other side? They heard something else. Truth. Raw, unpolished, inconvenient truth. Who was this woman? Why now? And why would someone risk everything, legally, socially, financially, to go up against the Sussex machine? The clues began to stack. A casting notice from 2018, tied to a production company later dissolved. An anonymous court record from Santa Barbara with redacted names and suspicious timing. A Jane Doe NDA filed months before Lilibet's birth, sealed by a judge with known connections to Hollywood entertainment law firms. Coincidence? Or part of a larger puzzle? Let's make something clear. This is not a takedown. This is a reckoning. Because if even part of this story is true, if there's even a sliver of authenticity in this woman's cry, then the world has been misled on a scale it's never imagined. And not by some obscure TikTok theory, but by two of the most watched, most polarizing, and most strategically managed public figures of our time. Harry and Meghan positioned themselves as truth-tellers, as victims of palace cruelty, as parents escaping oppression to protect their children. But what happens if they were the ones controlling the narrative, not to protect Lilibet, but to protect a secret? And why, in the midst of this chaos, has Buckingham Palace stayed dead silent? No denials, no confirmations, just a cold, calculated absence of comment, the royal version of a raised eyebrow. Do they know more than they're letting on? Is the crown protecting itself? Or is this silence a damning acknowledgement of something darker? Here's where things twist. The woman making this claim isn't after fame. She's not writing a book. She hasn't sold her story to the Daily Mail. She's turned down interviews. She's rejected financial settlements. Multiple sources say she's been living quietly in upstate New York, using an alias, working 2 jobs, and battling legal threats from an unnamed party linked to a high-profile brand. So why come forward now? Because, according to her, the lie went too far, and I couldn't take it anymore. That's it. No PR spin, No Netflix crew, just raw pain. She says she met Meghan in 2018 at a private audition. She says she was approached by someone claiming to represent a wellness startup. She was offered medical support, housing, legal aid, and then silence until the birth announcement. She claims the child, known publicly as Lillibet Diana, is not a product of Harry and Meghan's union. She claims the baby was never meant to be revealed, that the original plan was off-the-record surrogacy, and that everything changed when the couple realized the power of the story. A biracial princess named after the Queen and Diana. And here's where things go nuclear. She says there were threats. Threats if she ever contacted the press. Threats if she approached the palace. Threats if she even spoke the child's name. But something inside her broke. After watching the docuseries, after hearing Meghan speak of birthing my daughter, after seeing Lillibet used as a symbolic weapon in Harry's ongoing war against his family. Because to her, Lillibet isn't a prop. She's not an idea. She's her child. And the world deserves the truth. But let's pause. Because you're probably asking, is any of this real? That's the question. That's the trap. That's the genius of this story. Everything has been perfectly choreographed to create plausible deniability. No hospital confirmations. No paparazzi snaps. Just enough fog to make even the most serious investigation grind to a halt. But now, the fog is lifting. And what we're seeing beneath it is staggering. Over the next chapters, we're going to walk you through everything. The voicemail, the missing birth record, the nurse who vanished, the sealed court documents, the DNA results that never made it to court, and the final phone call that could bring the entire house of cards crashing down. This isn't fiction. This is a firestorm. And it's not just about Meghan. It's about power, image, control, and the cost of staying silent. Because if this woman is telling the truth, if this really is her daughter, then the world needs to ask a terrifying question. Who else knew? And more importantly, who else helped cover it up? But what really happened in that Beverly Hills birthing suite in June 2021? The answer might shatter the Sussex story for good, and the woman holding that answer just stepped out of the shadows. What if the first crack in a perfectly polished royal illusion came through a trembling voice on an anonymous tape? No headlines, no flashing cameras, no lawsuits, just a voicemail, shaky, distorted, raw. 7 words that changed everything. I just want my daughter back. Let's start at the beginning. The message arrived at 3:13 a.m. on a Thursday. A well-known UK journalist, whom we'll call D for his protection, was asleep in a London flat when his encrypted phone buzzed with a single audio file. No name, no subject line, just a nondescript sender, hidden voice 47@protonmail.com. He almost deleted it. But curiosity, the dangerous kind, made him listen. At first, just static, a rustling sound, then the unmistakable shudder of someone crying. Not the kind of crying you hear in rehearsed media interviews. This wasn't polished grief. It was primal. Then came the voice. Female, American, maybe late 30s or early 40s. Breathy, quiet, breaking apart between syllables. If you're hearing this, then I've already tried everything else. A pause, then a ragged inhale. She was mine. I carried her. I named her. And I gave her away because I thought I was doing the right thing. Another pause, longer this time. She seems to be steadying herself. They told me I could see her. One day, they promised. But now they're saying it's too dangerous, that it would confuse her, that it would ruin the brand. The brand? I don't want their money. I've never wanted it. I want my daughter back. And then, silence. No outro, no name, no contact number, just a faint beep. And the file ends. Now, let's pause for a second. Because in a world where deep fakes and digital manipulations dominate, it's easy to dismiss this as a hoax. But here's the catch. The journalist who received the message had been investigating inconsistencies in Lillibet's birth record since 2022. He was already knee-deep in sealed court filings, former Archewell staffers, and internal NHS documents linked to Meghan's maternity care in 2019. And he wasn't alone. Several independent journalists, Reddit whistleblowers, and even a former member of Meghan's private security detail had all been quietly circling the same strange constellation of events, all pointing to the idea that Lillibet's birth wasn't as clean-cut as it seemed. So when this message arrived, unprompted, unsourced, it didn't feel random. It felt like confirmation. But here's where things get darker. Within 12 hours of receiving the voicemail, D says his laptop was remotely wiped. His cloud account, encrypted through a Swiss-based provider, was suddenly inaccessible. His backup audio recording? Corrupted. Only one version of the voicemail remained. A lower-quality recording made with a second phone. The original, he believes, was professionally scrubbed. By whom? He won't say, but he hinted it wasn't the palace. It was someone much closer to Montecito. Now, let's go back to the voice. Because what struck analysts wasn't just the content, it was the tone. You can fake many things, words, accents, even crying. But pain? That specific kind of pain, maternal, betrayed, exhausted, is almost impossible to counterfeit, especially in audio. That's why D enlisted two independent voice analysts from Spain and Canada, both former government contractors, both with credentials tied to intelligence services. Their verdict? 95% probability that the speaker is not acting. Emotional cadence suggests real-time emotional distress, not simulated. They also found microfrequencies in her breath patterns consistent with someone under long-term trauma, including PTSD. Which begs the question, who is this woman? And why send a voicemail now? Here's where things spiral. 3 days after the leak, a throwaway account appeared on X, formerly Twitter. Username @NotHerProperty. The account posted a cryptic message. The voice you heard wasn't fake. And the child she's talking about is real. I saw the contract. Then the account vanished. Deleted within 18 minutes. But not before someone screenshotted the post and traced the IP address back to a Starbucks Wi-Fi network in Rochester, New York. Coincidence? Now here's where it gets even more bizarre. A local hospital in that same city, Unity Hospital, had a record from 2020 of a woman who had given birth and was listed as confidential patient, private surrogacy case. No first name, no surname, just a number. That file was sealed. Not unusual in surrogacy cases. But it was flagged again in late 2021, and the case notes suddenly changed. A new entry had been logged. Patient requesting clarification on rights of biological parent post-exchange. Referred to legal. Let's connect the dots. A woman gives birth under anonymous circumstances. Is told the arrangement is private. Years later, she resurfaces, claiming deception. She leaves a voicemail to a British journalist. And just days after the message leaks, every trace of her digital identity is systematically erased. Who has the power to do that? Who has the motive? And more importantly, who benefits? Now let's fast forward. As news of the voicemail began bubbling through the underground press, something strange happened in Montecito. Meghan Markle canceled 3 scheduled appearances. Her podcast taping was delayed. Her rep issued a vague statement citing family obligations. But privately, something else was happening. A source inside the Sussex's security team, a whistleblower who has since fled the U.S., claims there was an emergency internal briefing the day after the voicemail went public. In that meeting, Meghan allegedly broke down, repeating one phrase over and over. She said she'd never go public. Who is she? And why would Meghan react that way, unless she knew the voice? According to the source, Harry was visibly shaken. Not angry, just stunned. And when someone on staff asked if they should alert their legal team, Meghan reportedly said, "It's too late. We need to contain it, not fight it." Those aren't the words of someone being slandered. Those are the words of someone who expected this day might come. But why now? Why did the woman wait over 4 years to speak? That's where the emotional core of this story begins to unfold. Because according to those familiar with her, this woman, this alleged birth mother, has been fighting an invisible war for years. Silenced by documents. Isolated by threats. Paralyzed by guilt. She believed, at least at first, that Lillibet would be raised in love. That she'd be safe. That the world wouldn't know her origins, but at least she'd have a charmed life. But then the interviews began. The Netflix series. The public weaponization of Lillibet's name, her identity, her story. And something inside her snapped. Because you can hide behind contracts, behind lawyers, behind palaces and podcasts. But when you're a mother, and you hear someone else telling your story, wearing your child like a badge, profiting from pain you were told to erase, it does something to your soul. That's what the voicemail was. It wasn't a threat. It was a scream. A last-ditch cry from someone who once trusted and now feels betrayed beyond repair. So why does this matter? Because if that voice is real, if even one part of her story holds weight, then the very foundation of the Sussex narrative is cracked. This isn't about whether Meghan is a good mother. It's about whether she's told the truth about Lillibet's origins, her birth, her rights, her name. And if this woman really is Lillibet's biological mother, then what comes next could unravel everything Harry and Meghan have built. Because once that truth escapes, no brand, no crown, no Netflix contract will be able to bury it. But here's the twist no one saw coming. That voicemail. It wasn't the only recording she left behind. What if one missing document could expose the greatest royal cover-up of the decade? What if the paper trail was tampered with, not just once, but twice? And what if that quiet little change, buried in bureaucratic ink, became the smoking gun Meghan Markle never saw coming? This is the story of a single form, a California birth certificate, and the chaos it unleashed. Now, let's set the scene. In the United States, birth certificates are public records. They're not always easy to get, but with the right request, the right timing, and the right contacts, they can be viewed, at least in part, especially when the birth in question involves the child of a public figure. And when that public figure is Meghan Markle, the self-described privacy warrior, every detail becomes a potential landmine. So when Harry and Meghan announced the birth of Lilibet Diana Mountbatten-Windsor on June 6, 2021, 2 days after the alleged birth, the internet exploded with congratulations. The announcement was clean, polished, almost too perfect. They gave the world a name, Lilibet Diana. They gave the world a weight, 7 pounds, 11 ounces. They gave the world a date, Friday, June 4, 2021. They gave the world a location, Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital. But they didn't give the world one thing, the document. Not right away, not for weeks. And when it finally surfaced, something didn't add up. At first glance, it looked ordinary. A standard California birth certificate. Signatures in the right place. Names, times, stamps. But something was off, subtle, but chilling. The mother's name was listed as Rachel Meghan Markle. Okay, fair enough. That's Meghan's legal name. That's what she was born with. So what's the issue? The problem is, that's not how she was listed on Archie's certificate back in 2019. On Archie's certificate, she was referred to as Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex. Why the change? Why would she revert to her civilian name in one case, and not the other? Some speculated it was about titles. That after stepping back from royal duties in 2020, Meghan no longer wanted to use Her Royal Highness. But there's a catch. The couple retained their HRH titles. They simply agreed not to use them publicly. Legally, those titles still apply, especially on official documentation. And here's where it gets messy. Roughly 2 weeks later, a second version of the birth certificate surfaced. And this time, the name had been changed. Rachel Meghan Markle was replaced with the Duchess of Sussex. No Rachel. No Meghan. No first name at all. Just a royal title. That's not a minor update. That's not a typo. That's a deliberate legal alteration. One that triggered alarm bells for multiple legal analysts, former royal staffers, and at least one California notary who called the switch unprecedented for a public figure birth record. So let's break this down. If the original certificate listed Meghan by her full legal name, and that was later changed to a title that isn't recognized by U.S. law, then what exactly was the reason? Was it ego? A brand move? An assertion of status? Or was it damage control? Because here's what we've uncovered. According to one hospital employee at Santa Barbara Cottage, who spoke under condition of anonymity, there was confusion the day the certificate was being prepared. Her exact words? There was a lot of back and forth. Forms were pulled. Signatures were delayed. Someone from out of state called the registrar's office. They weren't sure what to list as the mother's identity. And then someone higher up made the call. Higher up? As in someone not physically present? As in someone managing the optics, not the facts? Here's what another source, a former legal aide in the California Department of Public Health, told us. You don't just change a parent's name on a birth certificate unless there's a legal challenge or a court-ordered amendment. Otherwise, it's fraud. So what triggered the amendment? What forced them to erase Rachel Meghan Markle and instead insert the Duchess of Sussex, a non-legal entity under California law? Here's one theory that's gaining traction. The woman behind the voicemail, the alleged birth mother, may have been listed on an earlier version of the certificate, or at least considered. Because get this, a whistleblower from the California Office of Vital Records revealed something astonishing. Around the time of Lillibet's birth, two separate requests were made to process a certificate for a female infant born June 4, 2021, at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital. 2. And both carried slight discrepancies. One listed the mother as Rachel Meghan Markle. The other had a different first name altogether, redacted in the leaked form, but confirmed to start with S. The surname was missing. Here's the real kicker. Only one certificate made it through the system. The other? Flagged. Frozen. Deleted. According to this source, that second request never should have existed unless there was a mix-up or a second party involved. Now hold on. Let's not leap too far. There are scenarios where multiple drafts of a birth certificate can be created. Clerical errors, legal edits, surrogacy declarations. But when the second version features an entirely different mother's name, in a high-profile case involving royalty, that's not a mistake. That's a cover-up, or at the very least, an effort to rewrite the origin story. And that's exactly what the woman behind the voicemail claims. She says she was originally listed as Lillibet's mother. She says she signed paperwork under pressure. She says she was told, "This document never leaves this room." She says she was promised the certificate would reflect her name, but that days later, her access to any records was revoked. Do you see the pattern? From the voicemail, to the certificate alteration, to the hospital confusion, to the two versions of the birth record. This isn't conspiracy. It's a trail, a digital breadcrumb trail of institutional panic. And it raises the most dangerous question of all. If Meghan Markle was not the person who gave birth to Lillibet, then what exactly happened inside Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital that day? Let's dig deeper. There are rumors, still unconfirmed, that Lillibet wasn't born at that hospital at all, that she was delivered elsewhere, privately, under medical supervision. That Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital was listed purely for optics, for legitimacy. That a room was booked, a staff assembled, but no delivery took place. Sound wild? It's not the first time something like this has been suggested. Remember the accusations around Archie's birth? The questions about Meghan's bump size changing daily? The bizarre belly cupping? The flat angles on camera one day, and then a protruding bump 24 hours later? In both cases, Archie and Lillibet. The narrative was tightly controlled. Minimal hospital presence. No official doctors speaking publicly. No photos on the steps. No details shared beyond what they wanted out. And again, in both cases, the birth certificate became the only official document the public could scrutinize. Which is why this detail matters more than anything else. Birth certificates are legal documents. They are supposed to be immutable. But in this case, the record was changed. Why? Why would someone with nothing to hide quietly alter a document meant to reflect the truth? And why has no one in the mainstream press, not one major outlet, pushed for an official explanation? Fear? Legal threats? Or complicity? You decide. Because there's one more twist we haven't mentioned yet. According to court records in Santa Barbara County, a sealed petition was filed on July 14, 2021, just over a month after Lillibet's birth. The subject line? Petition for protective order, non-disclosure of identity in custody matter. The petitioner? Redacted. The respondent? Also redacted. But the judge? The same one who, months later, signed off on the final version of Lillibet's revised birth certificate. And when a journalist tried to unseal that case, the motion was denied in the interest of national security and family safety. Family safety? Whose family? And what exactly are they protecting? Whatever that file contains. It has something to do with Lillibet's identity. Something Meghan, and likely Harry, desperately want to keep buried. But documents have a way of resurfacing, especially when someone is willing to risk everything to expose the truth. Because if the woman behind that voicemail is telling the truth, if she was the original mother listed on that certificate, then Lillibet's entire royal identity is built on a lie. And that lie is starting to unravel, because someone, deep inside the system, just leaked the hospital security logs from June 4, 2021. And what they reveal changes everything. What if someone was there that day, watching it all unfold from just a few feet away. What if the one person who knew exactly what happened inside that hospital room suddenly disappeared? No goodbye, no public statement, no social media, just vanished, like a ghost swallowed by a secret. This is the story of a woman the public has never heard of. A woman whose name has never appeared in the press, who never signed a book deal, who never sought fame. And yet, she may have been the only actual witness to the birth or non-birth of Lillibet Diana Mountbatten Windsor. Her name was supposed to be scrubbed, redacted, buried, but in the chaos of a recent whistleblower dump from Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital's internal logs, one name survived the purge. Amelia D. Salazar, registered nurse, assigned to the maternity wing, on duty. June 4, 2021, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. That's the exact time frame Meghan allegedly gave birth. Only now here's the twist. According to hospital employee records, Amelia Salazar never worked another shift again. She clocked out that evening and was marked inactive by the following Monday. No transfer notice, no resignation letter, no formal HR process. She was simply gone. Now, ask yourself, how often does a maternity nurse, experienced, certified, trusted, quit on the exact day a world-famous woman gives birth? Not 2 weeks later, not a month, that day. So who was Amelia Salazar? And what did she see? Let's rewind just 48 hours before the birth. A staffing email sent to hospital employees, now leaked, shows a special VIP protocol shift request was issued for the maternity wing. Code name, Project Lavender. Only 3 nurses were authorized for that shift. Only one had full access clearance to the VIP suite. That nurse, Amelia. According to internal logs, she entered Suite C, the most secure birthing room, at 9:42 a.m. and didn't leave until 2:17 p.m. That's nearly 5 hours inside a private room where Meghan was reportedly in labor. Now here's where things get very strange. Security logs from the door scanner show no doctor entered Suite C during that period. Let that sink in. 5 hours inside a hospital birthing suite, and no doctor comes in. There's more. The hospital's electronic fetal monitoring system, which records data from delivery suites, shows no data transmission from Suite C that day. That's unheard of. Even during C-sections, nurses typically log fetal heart rates, blood pressure, and delivery notes into the system. It's not just protocol, it's legal documentation. So how could a full-term royal baby be delivered with no digital trace? Unless there was nothing to record. Unless the room was staged. And what about Amelia? According to a second log, this one from the nurse's badge scan, she was the last hospital staffer to exit the suite that day. She walked out, clocked out, and never returned. The next morning, when her supervisor tried to call her, the line was disconnected. By Monday, her work email bounced back. Account no longer active. By Wednesday, her emergency contact, a cousin in Fresno, told HR she hadn't seen Amelia in days. At first, it seemed like a burnout case. Pandemic fatigue. Emotional collapse. Nurses were leaving their jobs in droves during 2021. But this wasn't just quitting. This was disappearing. And it gets darker. Amelia's apartment, a one-bedroom in Goleta, just 15 minutes from the hospital, was found completely empty 2 weeks later. Neighbors say movers came at 11 p.m. on a Friday night. No lights, no noise, just boxes. And here's the kicker. Her lease had been prepaid 6 months in advance by a shell company registered in Delaware. The name of that company? Everglow Media Holdings, LLC. A firm with only one known client, Archwell Productions. Still think this is just a coincidence? Now let's bring it back to the voice message, the one we explored in Chapter 1. After the voicemail leak, an anonymous tip was sent to a UK investigative podcaster. The message read, "You're looking at the wrong people. The voice is real. But the key isn't Meghan. It's the nurse. Find the nurse. She's the last one who knows what really happened." And attached to that message, a photo, grainy, cropped, clearly taken in secret. It showed a woman in blue scrubs, shoulder-length brown hair, hands clasped nervously in front of her, walking beside a black SUV outside the hospital. Date stamped, June 4th, 2021. Time stamped, 2:19 p.m. 2 minutes after Amelia Salazar left Suite C. And right behind her, a woman holding a swaddled baby, whose face was completely obscured. The woman's face wasn't clear either. Sunglasses. Mask. Hair tucked into a hospital cap. But zoom in, and you'll see a security pass clipped to her belt. The name? S.R. Cole. Another name. Another mystery. But this isn't her story. Not yet. This is about Amelia. Because despite months of searching, no one has found her. Not her family. Not her friends. Not her old nursing classmates. She's not dead. She's not on a missing persons list. She's not in witness protection. She's just gone. Wiped. The digital age makes it nearly impossible to truly disappear. There's always a trail, a login, a receipt, a photo. But Amelia left nothing. No digital footprint. No banking history. No updated medical license. It's as if someone erased her or helped her disappear. So here's the burning question. Why? Why would a nurse walk away from her entire life? Her job, her home, her identity. Unless she witnessed something so shocking, so ethically compromising, that staying silent was no longer possible. But speaking out was too dangerous? Some say she was paid off. Others say she was threatened. One source claims she was offered relocation with long-term privacy support. But here's the detail that gives us chills. Before she vanished, Amelia left a single sticky note inside her locker at the hospital. Found days later by janitorial staff and leaked anonymously, the note read, "I did what they asked. I hope that's enough. That's it. No name, no date, no explanation. But you tell us, what would you do in her shoes? If you saw something that didn't match the public story, and you were told to be quiet? If the most powerful PR machine in the world said, this never happened, forget what you saw. Would you speak out? Would you vanish? Or would you do exactly what Amelia did?" Now here's where it gets really disturbing. Just last month, a Reddit user claiming to be Amelia's ex-boyfriend posted a cryptic AMA, Ask Me Anything, thread titled, "My ex was the nurse who delivered Lillibet. AMA, but I won't answer who her real mom is." It was deleted within 4 hours. But not before thousands of people read one particular comment he posted. She cried for days. She said she couldn't unsee it. That she was part of a lie. That she wanted to tell the world, but they made her sign something. Something scary. And when asked what she saw, he replied, "She said the woman in the room wasn't Meghan." Let that sink in. Because if Meghan Markle wasn't in the suite, if someone else delivered that baby, then who was it? And where is that woman now? Because Amelia Salazar isn't just a missing nurse. She's the key. She's the living, breathing proof that whatever happened that day, whatever was supposed to happen, didn't. And the people who know the truth, they're getting harder and harder to find. But what if one of them is about to break? Because there's one more person who claims to have been in that hospital wing that day. Not a nurse, not a doctor, not a royal, a security guard. And what he saw will shake everything we think we know about June 4th, 2021. What kind of woman vanishes for 4 years? No press, no lawsuits, no public outcry, and then emerges, not to sell her story, not to demand cash, but to say just one haunting line. "I want my daughter back." What kind of woman risks the wrath of a global PR machine? What kind of mother would dare go up against the House of Windsor and the most image-obsessed couple in the world? The kind who was never supposed to exist. Her name hasn't been published. Her face hasn't been shown. And for now, we'll call her Elena. A pseudonym, yes, but one we'll use to protect her. Because someone is trying very hard to make sure her voice stays buried. But it's too late for that now. Because Elena is no longer staying silent. Not after what she claims was taken from her. Not after what she says she was forced to sign. Not after watching the child she says she birthed be used in Netflix documentaries, children's books, and magazine features as a symbol of empowerment. When, in her words, it was a transaction, a deception, a trap I'll never escape. So who is Elena? Let's rewind the tape. In 2018, she was just another struggling actress. Mid-30s, gorgeous but tired-looking. Waiting tables in Silver Lake, doing voiceover work for food delivery apps, trying to land bit parts in indie horror films. Her Instagram, now deleted, was full of dog selfies, sunset hikes, and audition flyers. But one day in early October, she gets approached after a yoga class in Brentwood by a woman calling herself a casting coordinator for a new women's health brand. Nothing flashy, no company name, just a warm smile and a vague pitch. "We're working on something private, an empowerment series. We'd love to have someone like you." that someone would later turn out to be Meghan Markle, or more specifically, someone working very close to her. Elena goes to a second screen test in a minimalist office building in Culver City. She's asked odd questions. Are you open to relocation? Have you ever considered private surrogacy? Are you currently trying to have children? It doesn't feel like an audition. It feels like a pre-interview for something else. Within a month, she's offered a contract. But not for a film. For discretion. She's told the project is confidential. That it involves a high-profile humanitarian woman interested in expanding her family. She's told she'll receive generous compensation, medical costs covered, legal support, travel, anonymity. She's told she'll be doing something extraordinary, that she'll be helping create a legacy, but she'll need to sign an NDA, and she'll need to cut contact with friends, social media, and public gigs, just temporarily, they assure her. So Elena disappears from the public eye. From October 2018 to May 2019, she's living in a rented home in Topanga Canyon, overseen by a private wellness liaison and a rotating nurse staff. She sees Meghan only once, according to her account. In January 2019, she says Meghan looked thin, stressed, and unrecognizable from her public image. She claims they spoke briefly in a hallway. That Meghan said, "You're doing something beautiful. Thank you. I promise you'll be protected." And then she was gone. Fast forward to June 2019. Elena is no longer pregnant. She never confirms what happened to the child she was carrying. Only that, it wasn't mine after the 7th month. She's moved again, this time to upstate New York. A one-bedroom cottage, an SUV with tinted windows, an anonymous corporate lease, paid for by, yes, Everglow Media Holdings LLC, the same shell company connected to Archwell's Logistics. Now here's where things go silent. Elena doesn't reach out to press. She doesn't go to court. She doesn't file complaints. For almost 2 years, she says nothing. Until 2021. That's when the real breakdown happens. Because in June 2021, the Sussexes announced the birth of their second child, Lillibet Diana. Elena sees the headlines, sees the name, sees the story, and something inside her shatters. She says she screamed, collapsed, nearly threw a lamp across the room. Why? Because that name, Lillibet, was her chosen name. She says she used it for months during her pregnancy. That the name was her grandmother's nickname in her family. That she wrote it in a notebook she left behind in the Topanga house. She says Meghan stole it. That she was promised the child would never be public. That this was a private arrangement. A healing experience. That no photos, no names, no narratives would ever go out. But now, her daughter's name was plastered across every media outlet in the world. The final straw? Seeing Meghan cradle the baby on Netflix, calling her my little miracle. Elena broke. She started writing letters. To lawyers. To journalists. To British agencies. To palace staff. She signed them all as S.R. Cole, a coded identity based on her grandfather's surname and her dog's name. She wrote, "I was promised protection. I was promised this child would never be paraded for press. You lied. I have photos, medical notes, and a copy of the signed paperwork. If you force me to go public, I will." For months, she got no replies. But her mail started going missing. Her car was broken into. Her bank froze 2 transactions from unknown sources in Beverly Hills. And then, a man in a black suit approached her outside a grocery store in Albany and said, "We'd hate for you to lose the privacy you enjoy." That's when she stopped writing. Until she sent the voicemail. The same voicemail from Chapter 1. The one with the trembling voice. The plea. The heartbreak. The line that cracked the Sussex machine wide open. "I don't want their money. I just want my daughter back." But she didn't stop there. She left another message, this one sent to a podcast producer in the UK. A 45-second voice memo. Her words were chilling. "This was supposed to be my closure. My healing. I believed in her, Meghan. I believed in the way she spoke. About empowerment. About choice. But she didn't want a child. She wanted a storyline. And now I'm the villain in a fairy tale I never asked to be part of." She goes on to say, "I know they'll say I'm crazy, that I'm unstable, that I'm doing this for attention. But I've had 4 years to come forward, and I didn't. Until she forced my hand. Until I saw the lie wrapped in royal ribbons. That audio clip hasn't been aired. Not yet. But it exists. and multiple outlets are negotiating to secure her first full interview. She won't appear on camera. She won't show her face. But she says she's ready to show the documents, the receipts, the emails, the blood test. Yes, she claims she still has access to a partial DNA report issued during the medical transfer of gestational rights. She says the test proves a clear biological match between herself and the child known publicly as Lillibet Diana. So why hasn't she gone to court? Simple. She says she doesn't trust the courts. She says she was threatened with global defamation suits and violation of national privacy treaties if she ever filed in a U.S. jurisdiction. And most chilling of all, she says an Archwell representative told her, quote, "This is bigger than you. This isn't about motherhood anymore. This is about the crown. This is about the narrative. If you come forward, you won't just lose the case. You'll lose everything." So she went into hiding. Until now. Because Elena is done hiding. She says she's ready to go public, but only after one final act. She wants a meeting, not with lawyers, not with the press, but with Harry. She says he's the only one who might still have a soul in this. She's requesting a private meeting in a neutral location, off the record. Not to fight, not to sue, but to ask directly. Does she know? Does Lillibet know who I am? We don't know if that meeting will happen. We don't know if Elena will be silenced again. But what we do know is that someone is finally listening. Because just days after her latest outreach, a mysterious man surfaced in LA. A man with no previous connection to this story. A man who claims he drove the package on June 4th, 2021. And according to him, the woman in that back seat wasn't Meghan Markle. What if the most carefully guarded secret in royal history was never a secret to begin with? What if the public saw the red flags in real time, but chose to ignore them? And what if the world is now waking up to a stunning possibility that Lillibet Diana, the child hailed as a symbol of royal progress and multicultural pride, may have been born through surrogacy, and we were all lied to? The rumors didn't start yesterday. They've been simmering since Meghan's first pregnancy with Archie. Remember the belly cupping? The folding bump controversy? The moments caught on camera where her stomach seemed to shift, compress, or swing unnaturally. Internet sleuths, royal watchers, and former insiders have long whispered about it. But back then, it was all brushed off. Conspiracy, misogyny, racist trolling. And to be fair, a lot of the commentary was exactly that. Ugly, baseless, mean-spirited. But not all of it. Because a handful of people weren't mocking Meghan. They were asking serious questions. And now, with the emergence of Elena, the woman in hiding, the missing nurse, the altered birth certificate, and the mystery voice memo, those old questions have taken on terrifying new weight. So let's go back. Let's talk about the rumors. The ones no one in the mainstream press dared to touch. Let's start with the bump incident. October 2018, Meghan attends an engagement at the Royal Academy of Arts in London. She's reportedly 4 months pregnant with Archie. But in one now infamous video, her belly seems to collapse inward as she bends to sit down, then bounces back out moments later. The clip goes viral. Some blame camera angles. Others suggest it's a loose maternity dress. But midwives and OBGYNs online say the movement defies basic anatomy. Then there's the belly shift video from early 2019. Meghan walks through a public event in Morocco. Her bump seems to swing from side to side, independent of her body, like a strapped-on pillow. And then there's the disappearing bump. Photos taken days apart, showing radically different bump sizes, leading some to ask, was she alternating prosthetics? Back then, it was chalked up to paranoia. But now, in the context of 2 different pregnancies, both cloaked in secrecy, both devoid of hospital documentation, both involving title disputes and inheritance questions, suddenly, it's not so easy to dismiss. Let's talk about Lillibet. Her birth, or alleged birth, happened in California. That gave Meghan control. No royal photo call. No hospital press access. No publicly named doctors. But here's the catch. Lillibet was born in the U.S., under U.S. law. And under U.S. law, if surrogacy is used, it must be disclosed in certain legal filings. The intended parents and the surrogate typically sign legal pre-birth orders, documents that can be sealed, yes, but must exist. So why has no document ever surfaced? Not even a hint. Here's a theory that's been quietly spreading behind the scenes, among lawyers, journalists, and even within palace circles, that Lilibet's birth involved a private gestational carrier, with an NDA so aggressive, so far-reaching, it extended to doctors, nurses, hospital admin, and even the woman herself, Elena. That the entire process was executed under a privacy structure built for celebrities, shell companies, non-disclosure arbitration clauses, cash-only service providers, and backed by Meghan's entertainment industry legal team, not royal medical authorities. And that this arrangement, once Meghan and Harry realized the PR power of birthing a Diana-named daughter, was flipped from private to public, without full consent from all parties involved. Which would explain the panic, the threats, the vanishing of Amelia Salazar, the lockdown of the birth record. Because the moment Meghan claimed to have physically birthed Lilibet, the lie became royal canon. And unspooling it now wouldn't just embarrass her, it would shatter the image they built. Now let's bring it back to the new bombshell. The man we mentioned before, the security driver, came forward last month to an Australian outlet under the alias Jack. He claims he worked for a private transport company subcontracted by a celebrity security firm. And on June 4, 2021, he was tasked with driving a medical delivery client from a luxury birthing center in Topanga Canyon to a residential property in Montecito. His exact words? She was pale, exhausted, and clutching a baby wrapped in lavender cloth. She didn't say a word, but I was told her name was not Meghan. He says the woman was not recognized as a celebrity. No press followed. No media alert was triggered. No photos exist. Because she wasn't the story. Meghan was. And that's the point. Because whether Meghan used a surrogate or claimed she didn't, the narrative was more important than the fact. And the palace? The monarchy? They went along with it. Why? Because acknowledging surrogacy creates a succession problem. According to royal precedent, children born via surrogacy may not qualify for titles or lines of succession unless specific conditions are met, including transparency with the sovereign and acceptance by the Church of England. And if that transparency didn't happen, if the monarch at the time, Queen Elizabeth II, wasn't informed of Lilibet's origins, then her right to the title princess would be called into question. Which is exactly why the palace didn't immediately list Lilibet as a princess after Charles ascended the throne. Remember, it took 6 months for Lilibet's name to be added to the official royal website. 6 months. You think that was a typo? No, that was a quiet internal war. A battle over whether acknowledging her title meant endorsing a lie. And ultimately, Charles caved. But sources say he only did it after a private assurance from Meghan's lawyers. A statement allegedly declaring Lilibet was their biological child, but not necessarily stating who gave birth. That's the loophole. That's the game. Now here's the kicker. Multiple sources, including 2 Hollywood insiders, claim Meghan and Harry were planning a documentary subplot around Lilibet's birth, showing candid footage, Meghan in labor, hospital scenes, and a first look at the newborn. But suddenly, that storyline was cut, edited out, entirely. One Netflix producer said, off the record, "We were told to drop all birthing content." The message was clear. Don't go there. Why? Why censor the most emotional, relatable, historic part of their story? Unless it wasn't real. Unless someone behind the scenes threatened to blow the whole thing open if they aired staged footage. And let's not forget, even in the final edit of Harry and Meghan, Lilibet is barely seen. Her face is obscured. Her moments are brief. She's never fully present. Almost like they're hiding her. But from whom? From Elena? From the public? From the truth? Now pause. Ask yourself honestly. If Meghan had used a surrogate and had been open about it, would the world have rejected her? Probably not. Surrogacy is legal, common, a choice made by millions. So why hide it? Why lie? The answer is power. Optics. Control. Meghan and Harry didn't want to be relatable. They wanted to be legendary. They wanted to birth a new Diana. And you can't manufacture a messiah if you admit you rented a womb. That's the tragedy. Because if surrogacy had been handled honestly, none of this would be happening. Elena would have been compensated, supported, and respected. The palace wouldn't be scrambling. The press wouldn't be on high alert. But now, it's spiraling. Because another voice is about to enter the arena. A former palisade. Someone who saw the internal memos. someone who sat in the room when Charles first read the legal warning from Meghan's team. And according to our sources, that aide just agreed to speak. How long did the palace know? That's the question ricocheting through corridors at Clarence House, whispered behind gloved hands at Windsor luncheons, and now, finally, creeping into the public square. How long did King Charles, Queen Camilla, and the senior royal court know that the Sussexes' carefully crafted fairy tale might have been a fabrication? And more crucially, what did they do about it? Let's start here. In March 2020, Meghan and Harry officially stepped back from royal duties. But privately, long before the Oprah interview, before Montecito, before Netflix deals, the palace was tracking discrepancies in the Sussex narrative. Not for gossip, not for revenge, but because of succession. Because in the monarchy, bloodlines aren't just family issues. They're constitutional concerns. And a whispered question had already started to echo in closed-door meetings. What if Meghan didn't give birth to Archie herself? It sounds shocking, even cruel. But according to a former private secretary to King Charles, we'll call him Mr. Whitlock, who spoke under anonymity after years of service, this wasn't idle paranoia. It was triggered by a specific legal memo, submitted by an unnamed senior aide. That memo, which has never been seen by the public, raised questions about the absence of certified medical records related to Meghan's maternity care during both pregnancies. Not just unpublished records, missing records. Here's what Whitlock told us. There were two versions of every document. One for public release, sanitized, basic, and one for internal review. But the second file was incomplete. He goes on. By early 2021, senior officials were aware of irregularities, but no one wanted to push. The Queen was declining in health. William was already at war with Harry. And Charles wanted to avoid scandal at all costs. So the files were buried. But the rumors weren't. Behind closed doors, palace courtiers whispered about the bump anomalies, the sudden shift to California, the delayed birth announcements, and then the shock of the name Lillibet. That was the moment everything cracked. Why? Because the name Lillibet wasn't just sentimental. It was sacred. It had belonged to the Queen, her private nickname since childhood, used only by close family. Even Prince Philip rarely said it aloud. And according to Whitlock, Meghan never asked permission. Despite what the Sussexes claimed, Charles was said to be privately furious, the Queen deeply hurt. But instead of going public, the firm decided to do what it always does. Circle the wagons. But then something else happened. 2 weeks after the birth, a legal document arrived at Buckingham Palace, sent from a private law firm in Los Angeles, marked strictly confidential, addressed to the sovereign's legal counsel. Its contents? A declaration, notarized, heavily redacted, stating that Lilibet Diana Mountbatten-Windsor was the biological daughter of Prince Henry Charles Albert David and Rachel Meghan Markle. But the key word here was biological. Not born of, not delivered by, biological. And in royal legal terms, that difference matters. Because under centuries-old precedent, backed by church tradition and crown protocol, a royal heir's legitimacy must be beyond dispute, especially when titles and lines of succession are involved. So Charles had a decision to make. Should he demand transparency, DNA confirmation, proof of birth? Or should he do what his mother had done for 70 years and put duty above scandal? We all know what he chose. Silence. But privately, the wheels were turning. According to a retired courtier who handled interroyal correspondence, Charles ordered a discreet audit of all records tied to Lilibet's arrival. That included hospital communications, UK travel logs for Harry and Meghan's team, cross-checks with private jet manifests, medical board licensing for Meghan's alleged care team. What they found? Nothing. No confirmed doctor. No verified birth location. No medical witness willing to confirm presence. One file, marked OBGYN SB Cottage, was missing entirely. And that's when, according to Whitlock, the palace knew something was wrong. Here's where it gets even more extraordinary. In September 2022, mere days after Queen Elizabeth's death, Charles held a private meeting at Clarence House with the royal household's most senior legal advisors. Topic: titles. He needed to decide whether Archie and Lillibet would become prince and princess under the new regime. Historically, they were entitled. The 1917 letters patent granted titles to grandchildren of the sovereign. But Charles hesitated. He delayed. He reportedly asked his counsel, "Is there any reason to withhold? Any grounds, legal or otherwise?" And that's when another document surfaced. A sealed petition, dated July 2021, filed in Santa Barbara County, California. Subject: parental rights, confidential. Redacted names. No parties listed. But the timing? The jurisdiction? The matching birth date? Whitlock says it set off alarms. Even more so when an Archwell lawyer was caught placing multiple calls to the Royal Communications Secretary over a span of 5 days following that document's discovery. So what did the palace do? They stalled. No announcement about the children's titles was made for 6 months. No photos of Lilibet were released officially. No comment from Charles. Until, according to insiders, Meghan's team issued a private ultimatum. Give the titles, or the documentary goes live with scenes you'll regret. And just like that, the princess title was granted. With no ceremony, no celebration, just a quiet website update on royal.uk. Why? Because Charles chose preservation over confrontation. Because the royal family couldn't afford a media war during its first year under new leadership. Because challenging Lilibet's origin in public would have been nuclear. But now, the lid is slipping. And the sources are talking. Whitlock isn't alone. At least 2 other royal aides have confirmed versions of his story, under condition of anonymity. One said, "The palace knew there were questions about the birth, but they decided the cost of clarity was higher than the price of a lie." Another? "Charles wanted to believe Harry, but he never trusted Meghan. Not after the Queen's death. Not after the title stunt. And certainly not after the memoir." But there's more. One royal legal insider claims the palace began consulting constitutional scholars about a worst-case scenario. What if Lilibet's birth was ruled non-compliant with succession protocols? Could her title be revoked? Could she be removed from the line of succession entirely? The answers? Legally murky, politically catastrophic. One wrong move, one public accusation, and the royal family would be accused of racism, elitism, cruelty toward a child. So instead, they waited. They watched. They buried the questions. But not everyone inside the palace agreed. According to our sources, Princess and the ever-blunt royal enforcer raised concerns privately with Charles, stating, "We cannot have ambiguity in the line of succession." Reportedly, she pushed for a formal inquiry. Charles refused. So and backed off for now. But now that voices like Whitlock are speaking, and Elena's truth is emerging, the pressure is mounting again. Because the truth is leaking. And the palace is running out of sandbags. But here's where it gets truly dangerous. A new figure is stepping forward. Someone who isn't tied to the palace. Someone who worked in Meghan's inner circle on U.S. soil. Someone who handled the paperwork no one else ever saw. A former legal assistant to Meghan's attorney team. And according to sources, she still has a copy of the original agreement. You can hide court documents. You can scrub emails. You can even silence a surrogate. But there's one kind of person you can't erase. The ones paid to stand right beside you, silently watching everything. This is the story of a bodyguard, once loyal, once trusted, who says he drove the package on June 4th, 2021. And according to him, the woman holding that package was not Meghan Markle. He goes by the name Reese. Not his real name, not even close. But his voice is distinct, low, deliberate, emotionally restrained. His story was first captured during a confidential phone interview with a Los Angeles-based royal blogger. The blogger, who previously worked in celebrity security, recognized Reese's vocabulary instantly. Why? Because they'd worked similar jobs. And what Reese described was no ordinary day in the life of private protection. According to Reese, on the morning of June 4th, he was dispatched by a well-known private security firm in West Hollywood. The job? Single transport. No press, no tail, under executive shielding conditions. Code 4, don't ask questions. Just follow the route. He was to pick up a woman from a gated property in Topanga Canyon, then deliver her, with no stops, to a Montecito estate. And he was told, very specifically, this is for Mrs. Windsor. Not Meghan, not the Duchess, not Rachel Meghan Markle. Just Mrs. Windsor. So Reese assumed he was working for Meghan. After all, who else in California goes by that alias? But what happened next stunned him. At 9:57 a.m., a woman emerged from the side door of the house. She wasn't Meghan. He's sure of it. He'd seen Meghan in person before, briefly, at an event in 2019 where his firm handled crowd control. He knew her posture, her walk, her profile. This woman, taller, slightly heavier, wearing a hoodie and oversized sunglasses, holding a bundled infant wrapped in a purple fleece. No eye contact. No conversation. She slid into the back seat and whispered, "Please drive."